and I had the good fortune of being introduced 20 years ago. Wow. I wanted to do a show with humor and song, and I was introduced to Ellen as a fabulous composer. And initially, when I went over to her and Michael Lydon, her husband's apartment, I was a little intimidated because Ellen went to Harvard and Michael went to Yale. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I want to make some kind of funny songs, And Ellen is so hysterical to work with. So we developed this very entertaining show, 7.5 Habits of Highly Effective Mistresses. Thank you.
It's not only entertaining, but it's very educational.
Very educational. Unfortunately, I'm only allowed to use that title when referring to the lawsuit. Yes, and unfortunately, no. My lawyer said I can't use 8 habits. I can't use 6.25 habits. Fortunately, I was sued by the Franklin Covey Corporation, owner of the trademark 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which it was a parody of. And you can't copyright a title, but you can trademark it. Now, fortunately, I have a thing for Jewish lawyers. So my 10 lawyers told me I could win based on First Amendment parody, but it would be probably pretty expensive. So I said, how do I settle? So I have a permanent injunction against me in Utah. Turns out they're Mormons. Now, on top of that, I was also arrested for that show. Yeah, Ellen and I had been rehearsing one night, and I left her and was walking home. It was a February evening, actually. Yeah. And there I saw a construction site already surrounded by those plywood walls covered with posters. And I think, we have a show coming up. I better promote. So I take out a little 8.5 by 10-inch poster, and I have a little bottle of Elmer's glue. And I'm carefully putting it up so as not to block anyone else's poster. And I hear a car drive up behind me. Vroom. And a voice, "Excuse me, ma'am, what are you doing?" I turn to see 2 undercover policemen get out of a yellow taxi cab. They come towards me and confiscate my Elmer's glue. They study the poster. Now you have to picture the poster. It was me wearing a red and black corset with strategically placed tassels. I made it myself. I'm very crafty. Garters and stockings. And I was holding a bejeweled riding crop. Now, I'm guessing if I was doing, say, a production of Romeo and Juliet at the community center, they would have let me go. As it was, I was handcuffed and taken to the yellow taxi cab. Now, the one guy was about 27, tall, sweet, and dim. He played the good cop. The other policeman, Kevin, was short, dark, and hairy. Just my type. Now, Tony apologized as he put me into the taxi cab. "I'm really sorry we gotta take you in. In the old days, we just would have given you a ticket. But under Giuliani, they want us to make downtown look nice. You can die on the street above 96th Street, but below 96th Street, we gotta clean the place up." They asked for my ID, and I didn't have one because I just was over at Ellen's. So they told me they were going to drive me to my apartment to get an ID. Then I was really nervous. My apartment was such a mess, I figured it would add to the crime. Inspiration strikes. I point out, that is me on the poster. They agreed to let that be my ID. Now, normally they would have driven me over to the police precinct on East 5th Street, which for years was featured at the beginning of NYPD Blue. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was closed for renovation. So they drove me over to Avenue D and 10th Street, then a very rough neighborhood with rundown housing projects. Tony apologizes again, but they'll have to put me in a cell while they run my information up to Albany to see if I'm wanted in another state. I briefly wondered if I was wanted in another state. They take off my belt and my shoelaces so I can't hang myself in my cell. And Tony has to fill out a form in triplicate. He asks my age, and when I tell him, he shouts my age loudly in wonderment. "You look great!" I'm not sure that makes me feel better, but I thank him. I am charged with criminal mischief, committing graffiti, and materials to commit graffiti. Tony told me it was the Elmer's glue. The Elmer's glue. Tony apologizes again, but they'll have to put me in a cell where there are already other inmates. They put me in an 8-foot by 8-foot cell. I try to act tough when I walk in. But the cellmates are too strung out to notice. One is slumped in the corner. Another perches on the bench, sort of catatonic until a policeman walks by, and then she jumps up and says, "Can I have a cigarette? Please, can I have a cigarette? I really need a cigarette." The third stands at the bars, and she slowly sinks down. And just when you think she's gonna fall over, she pops back up again. And I recall that time I tried heroin, and I think, there, but for the grace of God, go I. I sit gingerly on the bench trying not to touch anything, and I look around. Now, this police station is not like anything you see on CSI. Here, there's a bunch of policemen crowded around one computer terminal with one policeman typing with 2 fingers. All the others wait with their triplicate forms in hand. And I think, I have got to make these guys more efficient. Give them new computers, typing lessons. Now, all I was going to do was rehearse that night. So I think, well, I can get up and run the show. So I stand up in my cell and I begin the show. How to be a bad girl, it's easy to do, with the help of Dr. Faith. At the thought of his touch, would you even go Dutch? That's when you need my book so much. Cute cop Kevin comes rushing over. Shh, they're gonna think you're crazy. I was touched. He clearly cared. There was a definite attraction between us. I felt like dry kindling and he was a match.
Whoa.
I noticed he wasn't wearing a wedding ring. And I thought, how can I seduce him through the bars? I'm wild again, beguiled again. Suddenly a blood-curdling scream from the next cell ruins the romantic mood. And Kevin rushes off to see what's happening. I sit back on the bench and run my lines silently. At 2 a.m, suddenly, the bars all open up, and all the other inmates are taken out and lined up. Manacles are put on their ankles, and a thick chain is run through the manacles, forming an actual chain gang. They take out the screamer from the next cell. He appears to be a crackhead of about 35, and he shrieks, "I used to be ahead of the world, and soon I'll be back on top. I used to fly a private helicopter up to Maine and back with a model sitting on my fucking face there and back, and soon I'll be back on top, and you'll still be in this shithole." Wow. There's a stunned silence. His words cut too close to the bone. Finally, one of the policemen said, "Shut up!" And he addressed the other inmates. "All right, we're taking you down to central booking. At central booking, they're going to ask if you want to go to the hospital. Do not say yes. If you say yes, you will get out of the system, and God only knows when you'll get back in. Say nothing, and you'll be out on the streets tomorrow morning. Is that clear?" The chain gang nodded. This was very worrying for me. My roommates clearly needed medical attention. The chain gang moves out. And my 2 policemen, Tony and Kevin, sat back down and shared the New York Post. Here I was, 4 hours in jail, waiting, and I was due at work the next day where I was vice president at Random House. And I I'm thinking, I wonder what the CEO will say. Or worse, Bertelsmann, the parent corporation who made their first millions selling Bibles. Finally, they find out I'm not wanted in the other state. And they come over to get me out. They open the door and lead me out. They give me back my shoelaces and my belt. And Tony has to fill out another form in triplicate. Again, he asks my age. And when I tell him, he shouts my age loudly in wonderment. And I tell him to shut up. It's turned cold while I was in jail, so Kevin offers to drive me home. And I think things are looking up. But they put me back in the yellow taxi cab, and Tony and Kevin get in front and drive the wrong way up 2nd Avenue, panicking the few cars on the road. As we pull up to my apartment, I try to get up the nerve to ask Kevin out on a date, but I can't face rejection on top of jail. So I invite him to my next show. Kevin says, I'd love to come, but that night I have to be on graffiti patrol.